jump into the predictions. I've got the sheet. I'll read off each race, and then we can all weigh in with our informed, astute observations and predictions. And then we've got
I just have
several on here.
one request here, Kyle. I think we should hold president to last.
Okay, we will hold president until last. Actually, why don't I just go in reverse order then?
I think that's perfect.
Let's start with the 3 local ballot issues. Issue 2C, the roads tax. What do you guys think is going to happen there in Colorado Springs?
You want to go first, Vince?
Sure.
It's an easy one.
I think it's an easy one. I think this is going to pass. I think people have seen this as a proven concept. And this town will vote for taxes occasionally when it knows exactly where the money's going, right? And this has already gone through twice, am I right? Or is it twice? So I can see it going again. If it didn't go again, I think it would be a real blow to Yemi because he's already kind of lost the fight over the police academy. He's lost the fight over the ambulance service going to firefighters. And, he didn't really weigh in on the Amara annexation, but I can't imagine that he wanted that not to be approved. So I think it could really be a blow to Yemi if this doesn't go through and, raise questions about whether or not he was committed enough to it. But I think it's going to pass. What do you guys think?
Mark?
I agree. I think you're spot on. And I think it not only passes, it's better than 60-40.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it could get to 80.
Okay.
So
God, what an optimist.
Yeah.
Again, roads, public safety, all those things. I just think the likelihood of it passing by a gigantic margin is big again. And so, all right, 3 yeses across the board. Now let's talk about the 2 competing marijuana issues. You have 2D that the city council voted to put on the ballot that would prohibit retail marijuana in Colorado Springs forever, unless it was overturned in the city charter or whatever, I believe. And then you have issue 300, which is on the ballot to allow retail marijuana in Colorado Springs. So let's start with 2D. Where do you guys think that's coming?
Mark, you want to go?
I think 2D passes. So I think I think that one fails, and I think recreational marijuana passes.
And that would mean that we do prohibit retail marijuana.
Nope,
right?
I think marijuana is going to be able to be sold in Colorado Springs.
Say that again, Mark.
I think it's going to pass this time around. I think retail marijuana, the voters are going to approve the sale, to allow the sale of retail marijuana in the city of Colorado Springs. Was it issue 300 you said, Kyle?
Yep.
Yeah, I think 300 passes.
Okay. Vince?
I think it still fails, although, I just filled out my ballot a couple days ago, and the wording on this is pretty confusing, right? It's like, should the number of medical marijuana outlets be the same as the number of retail outlets, right? And it never really says this is to approve retail marijuana.
Vince, so that wasn't on my ballot, and I haven't seen it.
Oh, really?
Because I don't live in Colorado.
It's a pretty sneaky little ballot. I mean, I think somebody was smoking some reefer when they wrote it. But
well, you know what that sort of sounds a little bit like? It sounds a little bit like that whole county commissioner thing a few years ago. When they did the whole shall the commission be limited to 3 terms.
Yeah.
Without telling them that it was already limited to 2.
Yeah.
I think it's still going to fail. What I'd love as a journalist is for this one, for both of them to pass, because then what would we do? Right. But I think this is still going to fail. I think Colorado Springs likes being a place that has turned its nose up at marijuana. And it's just seen more and more evidence that it kind of messes up our city. Well, I know you disagree. I'd love to hear what you think, Mark.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, I hope they both fail, or I hope it fails. I
Yeah.
hope allowing the recreational sale of marijuana fails. I've been a long time opponent of recreational marijuana in the state of Colorado. In fact, geez, man, several years ago, we were working on some of these issues in the state legislature. I did a town hall for the potheads, and they just saw me as the face of evil. I stayed at Valley High Golf Course. I stayed there till 10 o'clock at night, talking to these potheads, trying to reason with them,
You
which
must
was,
have had Cheetos.
that was dumb on my part. Well, I get out to my car. What's my reward for staying there till 10 o'clock at night, trying to reason with potheads? They'd rubbed ranch dressing all over my car.
Man,
It actually, that story made the Huffington Post.
man.
It was ridiculous. So I mean, I hope it fails. I really do. I just think I think the proponents are getting better. I think I think they're better at crafting their message. I think that they've had more money than the opposition. Kind of selling their message, and I think it's I think less of society cares about marijuana now. But I
So,
hope you're right. I really hope you're right on this one, and I'm wrong.
so my prediction is going with Vince. I think 2D will be a yes and 300 will be a no. So I don't think we'll have retail marijuana. But my prediction is exactly opposite of how I'm voting.
Really?
Because I have a couple of reasons why I'm supportive of it. First of all,
One, he wants more weed, makes the
no,
podcast better.
nope, I don't use it.
I'm kidding.
No, but we've had recreational marijuana in Colorado now for 10 years. About 19% of adults in the state use it regularly. I guarantee you 19% of the adults in Colorado Springs use it. It's already here. It's being used. If the negative issues associated with it are what they say, then we already have them. So why not get the tax revenue to deal with the negative ramifications of it? If right now it's a drain on the public safety budget, if in fact it's causing problems. Now, the other thing is, and I've said this before, and it drives me nuts. 20% of all deaths in the United States among adults 20 to 50 years old are related to alcohol. I guarantee you it's not even 1% related to marijuana use. So the fact that everybody's been out of shape about legalizing marijuana and will do absolutely nothing to address the alcohol problem drives me crazy. It's swallowing the elephant and choking on the peanut.
Yeah. Well said. Well, we do have more medical marijuana outlets per capita than any other place in the state because we don't have retail, I think. But I don't know, Kyle, I don't know if you saw this big New York Times article that came out recently. They did this really in-depth study, and it links marijuana to psychosis more than I've ever seen before. It says it's addictive, which I've never heard anybody sort of spell out definitively. And then there's a syndrome they identify from people who use it like every day. And it really causes some serious problems. So I was surprised the New York Times did this reporting, but it was pretty damning and kind of scary to me, especially about the high potency of some marijuana. And they had a couple of case studies in Colorado. So
interesting. Okay, I'll go look at it. I'll go find
it. I think this tax revenue thing is we just haven't realized it. Haven't really realized it with medical marijuana or whatever, any other kind of marijuana that we've had in the community. One time when I was county commissioner, Bill Elder, sheriff of El Paso County, estimated, and they did this based on power company usage, estimated out in eastern El Paso County, there were about 500 illegal grow operations going on at any one time. You know, and some of these cartels had figured out that it's easier to bring, you know, come to Colorado and grow it here and then ship it out across the United States illegally than it is to grow it in Mexico or somewhere further south and then, you know, try to sneak it across the border illegally. So I think most of the sale, or still a lot of the sale that ends up happening, which I believe will happen even if we legalize, is going to be backdoor sales, or as my old granddad would say, you know, the kind of people that run these businesses, their agenda on Monday is to get to Tuesday, right? And so there's a lot of instant gratification sort of stuff that's done, and there's such a humongous tax burden put on marijuana that a lot of the sales end up happening out the back door, and we don't end up realizing the revenue, the tax revenue that we should. And I think that's just never been, for me, a persuasive argument. The amount of bad that comes with it and the cost to society and the cost to government is far outweighed by those additional revenues.
Got it.
Okay. All right.
All right.
We're going to move on to 8 of the 14 state ballot issues. So we might need to move a little faster through some of these. The Amendment H, judicial discipline procedures and confidentiality. I think this is setting up a different judicial oversight. I mainly put this on here, Vince, because I know you guys have done some pretty in-depth reporting on this recently. So what do you think? Is it going to pass?
We should mention this one is a constitutional amendment and requires 55% of the vote to pass.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you guys think?
I was talking to some of my reporters and they think it's going to pass. You're right. We've done 5 years of reporting on sort of the scandal in the Colorado Supreme Court where they kind of covered up this pay for silence scandal. And I will tell you that our story about that scandal, we have a new story by David Magoya about some more sort of malfeasance in the court in covering this up that we just published Sunday. And our editorial calling for the 3 Supreme Court justices who are up for retention not to be retained. Those have been our most popular stories in the last 4 or 5 days. So I think somebody's paying attention to this issue finally. And I think that gives this a chance of passing. It takes, really, Kyle, it takes the discipline out of the Supreme Court's hands and puts it into a separate body. From right now, they are sort of in charge of their own discipline. And, you know, that's the fox guarding the hen house a little bit. And justices just don't think they ever are wrong, right? This gives us a vehicle to sort of judge the justices, I think. So nice. I think it'll pass.
I agree.
Mark, what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I 100%. I agree it's going to pass. I think it brings a level of transparency to the judiciary that we haven't seen before. That needs to happen. You know, I've had some friends on the inside there. You know, one of my buddies I went to law school with had done government affairs for the court, you know, and had dealt specifically with the state Supreme Court on, you know, kind of legislative matters and dealing with them. And I think what Vince is saying and what he's getting from his reporting is 100% spot on accurate. I think that there's just no reason this doesn't pass.
Okay, I agree. So that's a non-controversial one. Okay, Amendment H, repealing the definition of marriage in the Constitution.
I think it passes, and it should pass. All this is a cleanup provision. Our marriage amendment in the Colorado Constitution has already been deemed unconstitutional when the U.S. Supreme Court said marriage isn't just between a man and a woman, that there can be same-sex marriage. So this is nothing more than a cleanup provision. I think it passes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Mark. Some people say it's redundant, but you know, why is it still in our Constitution? I'm surprised it's still there, right? After all, Colorado's pretty much in support of this and has been for a while.
Well, and this makes the Constitution smaller, which I'm a fan of.
I like that.
Yes, me too.
All right.
I agree.
That's 3 passes for this one too. I'm on board. Amendment 79, the constitutional right to abortion. Where do you guys think this one's going to go?
I think this will pass too. I think, there's a lot of support for abortion in this state. And that right, right to reproductive rights. And it's been sort of a real clarion call for people in Colorado, especially because a lot of other states now come here for reproductive rights and abortions. So I think you'll see a lot of women turning out in this election because of overturning of Roe v. Wade, and I think that'll help this pass in Colorado.
Okay.
I think Vince said the key thing there. It's about turnout. As you know, I've complained about before, Kyle, this literally nothing will change in the state of Colorado by adding this to our Constitution. Not a fan of adding things to our Constitution that I don't believe belong there. I don't think this belongs there, but it passes because this is 100% about voter turnout for the Democrats in the state of Colorado and people who believe in reproductive rights. It's about motivating that base, and I think it passes by a wide margin.
And I agree. I think it passes as well. So far, not a lot of controversy here. Amendment 80, the constitutional right to school choice. What do you think?
It passes as well, but for the same reason, I don't think the abortion issue belongs in the Constitution. I don't think this one belongs there either. But I think it passes.
I think this is going to fail. I think because you got that 55% threshold again, right? Because it's a constitutional amendment. And I think there's some, I've heard sort of a groundswell against it because of two things, I think. It introduces this vague right for parents to dictate the education of their children. And I think that makes Coloradans nervous because it could lead to lawsuits against teachers or schools if parents don't agree with what they're teaching. It could lead to more book banning kind of things. And it could just raise the tension between parents and schools. If this is in Douglas County, I think it would pass. But I think this parental right movement has been sort of, fizzling a little bit. And I'm not sure why. There's just been other things that sort of have taken the place of it. I also think, we already pretty much have school choice nailed down in this state. Our Democratic governor's for it, and you have pretty good choice. What we don't have is vouchers so that you can take public money and spend it on private schools. I think only 12 states have that now. And I think some people are going to be organized against this so we don't get closer to vouchers. That those forces against vouchers, I think, will try to turn out people in this election. So that's fail.
Yeah, interesting. And I'll tell you, Vince, that's just what you just said is exactly the reason I think we don't need the abortion amendment either.
Yeah.
You already have those rights in Colorado, right? Why do you need to further that? Why do you need to cement that, take up space in our Constitution? And just like you said, hey, we already have school choice rights. Now, I could make an argument that school choice is more in jeopardy in the state of Colorado, given who's in control in the legislature and the governor's mansion, than abortion is in the state of Colorado. So, I don't think either one of them belong. And by the way, I will tell you this, I'm a huge advocate of school choice. Maybe I shouldn't be. I was homeschooled from 6th grade on, which is an indictment against I was homeschooled from 6th grade on, indictment against homeschooling. My parents raised a lawyer politician. Where did they go wrong, right?
He finished last in his class.
Like the poster child for why you shouldn't homeschool your kid.
So here's the thing. I still think school choice is a red and blue issue. And with Colorado being as blue as it is, I think this fails. I look at that separate from, I agree that it's not necessary to be voting on it, but it is on the ballot. And so in this state, I think it fails. And primarily because of public dollars going to private schools. Mm-hmm. So, although it's fascinating to me how many people don't understand that charter schools are public schools.
Right,
Mhm.
There's a
right,
lot of people that think charter schools are private schools, which I think actually hurts this issue.
right, right.
So, okay. Proposition JJ, retaining additional sports betting tax revenue. I'm fascinated by sports betting. I don't know that this is all that controversial, but in the month of August, I think there was $347 million bet on sporting events just in Colorado.
What? Really?
I
Wow.
think. I thought you guys might
Wow.
have reported that. So, but I think that's the figure. Now, again, occasionally I'm wrong on stuff I find online, but that to me is fascinating that in less than a year or whatever it's been, that it's a third of $1 billion a month being bet on sports here. So my guess is I'm going to say I think this passes. I think retaining the additional revenue and using it for other things, or I can't even remember now specifically what it would be used for, but I think it passes.
And by the way, this is statutory. So this
Oh,
only
50.
requires 50% to pass.
Yep.
What do you think, Mark?
Man, I think I agree that it passes. I don't know that I have strong convictions one way or another. I'm not a big sports bettor, but I think there are enough people out there like me that are like, what's it going to hurt to keep extra revenue? And it's not like I'm going to be paying it. So I think it passes probably.
You know, I'm gonna be the dissenting vote and say it fails, just to be different. No, I think it's earmarked for water projects, Kyle, and I think that helps it. But boy, I keep seeing people on a statewide level vote against the government keeping any more refund money. And, you know, I keep seeing these votes that sort of preserve Tabor, and you know, that may be coming from a Colorado Springs perspective, but those things haven't done well in the past, have they, Mark? I think in general, those things kind of go down, right?
Yeah, and I think what the state has not done a good job of that local jurisdictions have done better with is articulating what the dollars are going to be used for.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it's how 2C passed, for example, the first time that it was ran. It was like, here's a very specific list of road projects or ideas of what we're going to do with this money, and this is why we need it. And that's why it passed. And I think the state hasn't quite figured that out yet when they do these big statewide initiatives to say, hey, this is really how we're going to use these dollars. In fact, I really haven't seen any advertising at all, any campaigning on behalf of this initiative, which now you kind of got me thinking maybe it's not going to pass.
Yeah, and even, you know, the water projects that it mentions in the ballot language are kind of vague. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, I think you got to be pretty specific.
I agree.
You changing your vote, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to change my vote to this doesn't
Flip
pass.
flopper.
I can be educated. I can actually be
At home.
educated.
You can be educated at home.
I mean, geez, if Kamala can be educated on fracking, I can be educated on sports betting tax revenues. Come on.
Nice.
Well
Nice.
said, well said, well said.
Okay, so I'm the odd person out on that one. The next one is Prop 127, trophy hunting, or more to the point, prohibiting hunting of bobcat, lynx, and mountain lions in Colorado. I put this one on there partly because of right now, there's a lot of controversy about the reintroduction of wolves. Wildlife issues are at the forefront here in Colorado. So what do you guys think on this one as far as prohibiting the hunting?
Vince?
Well, you know, I think this is going to pass for the reasons you just sort of articulated. It's interesting to me that sort of outdoor groups and wildlife management groups are against it because they feel like they'll lose some authority to manage wildlife, and that they say hunting does help, you know, manage wildlife in a effective way. That one kind of struck me, But I still think there's a lot of people out there who will just think this is going to protect more wildlife and it'll pass. And that they just come at it from that gut kind of instinct. Although, like you said, Kyle, the whole way the whole wolf reintroduction has been managed has been miserable. And if it doesn't pass, I think that'll be one of the reasons is people think Colorado didn't do this very well. What do you think?
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, I think this is Wolves 2.0, and I think it passes, even though wolves have been mismanaged. That whole issue has been mismanaged. But I agree with concerns that Vince has here. This is just sort of fraught with problems in my mind, just like wolf reintroduction is fraught with problems. Number one, it says it protects ranchers. They can kill these things if they kill their livestock. But this isn't like the castle doctrine, where if somebody breaks into your home and you shoot them, the DA can't even charge you. They're issue precluded from charging you in that case at all. I may still get charged by the district attorney's office if I'm protecting my livestock. And by the way, how do I define livestock? Is it my frickin' 10 chickens in the chicken coop? Or does it have to be a herd of cattle, right? And oh, by the way, does the mountain lion have to have actually physically attacked the cow before I shoot it? Or is he, just stalking the cow? Can I shoot it? I just think this is fraught with problems. And what happens when, I live on 5 acres and I live up close to the mountains. What happens when one of them attacks my dog?
Yeah.
Do I get to defend my pets as well as my livestock? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's fraught with problems, but I think it passes.
There's some gray areas though. Yeah.
Here's what's interesting.
I think the proponents have done a great job of campaigning it.
I think it passes. I agree with you guys. Years ago, I did some work with the Colorado Division of Wildlife on a campaign promoting hunting and fishing in Colorado and wildlife management and all of those things. So I probably learned just enough to be a little bit dangerous or whatever, but there is a balance of how you manage wildlife. And it's why we hunt so many deer in Colorado, because otherwise the proliferation would just be ridiculous. But I wonder, if you stop hunting these cats, what impact does that have on other populations down the line? But then this weekend, I was at an event and I was talking to somebody, and their rationale was when Yellowstone did the whole wolf reintroduction, it completely changed the whole environment as far as the animals down the food chain and everything else for the better. And so I have no idea what it'll ultimately do. I just think in Colorado, this passes right now.
The reason I think the whole wolf reintroduction worked in Wyoming is because it was contained to Yellowstone, a wild place, wild animals in a wild place. And
Yep.
Kyle, they allowed hunters to hunt any wolves that got out of Yellowstone.
Oh,
So
interesting.
they were contained in Yellowstone, and that changed that environment. But this proposal and our wolf proposal are statewide. And, we have 10 times the population of Wyoming, and I just don't think it works statewide. We got too many people.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, in Wyoming, the wolves could go years without seeing a human.
Yeah.
My God, this is why we have smart people on this podcast. People that are so much smarter than us. What an explanation. That was brilliant.
Okay, Prop 130, funding for law enforcement. This would authorize, I think, $350 million out of the state budget to be allocated among law enforcement organizations, county and city and towns and whatever throughout Colorado to help supplement their revenues. I think one of the reasons is for hiring purposes, but I think for other uses as well. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hiring, it's mental health, treatment, and it's also dollars for Gold Star families.
Yeah.
that lose a loved one. Listen, this thing passes. I think this is the biggest no-brainer on the ballot, a bigger no-brainer than 2C. It definitely passes, but I think there's some issues related to this. So where does that 350 million come from? It
That's
comes
a
out of the
lot of
state
money, a
general
lot of
fund.
money.
Yeah, it's 350 million that comes out of the state general fund. The state's already projecting a budget shortfall for next year, $900 million, not including this. It's going to be an extra $350 million in state revenue that's not going to be there. I've had some discussions with some legislators, and I said, what are you going to do about this if it passes? Here's the only thing that's going to happen. Dollars are fungible, right? They're going to end up giving this $350 million to counties, local governments, with very specific restrictions associated with it. And they're going to end up taking $350 million away in other areas. And if they can't take $350 million away from local governments in other areas, it's going to also come out of higher ed, and it's going to come out of transportation.
Yep.
I mean, I get it. I support the idea here. I'd love to see more dollars go to law enforcement. I'm just not sure this is the correct way to do it, but it's going to pass by a wide margin.
Vince?
Yeah, I agree that it's going to pass. And, I think in almost any jurisdiction in the state, people are seeing recruiting problems for law enforcement officers, and they want to beef that up. And they know they need more money to hire more people and recruit more people. And almost everybody is sort of understaffed. It's funny how far we've come from George Floyd days when people were calling for, a peace force instead of police, right? And it seems like we've kind of readjusted that thinking, and I think people are eager to sort of, show police that they're behind them, show them support. So I think it's going to pass.
Yep, I agree. I think it's going to pass too. Same concerns about the state budget that you were talking about, Mark. What's it coming out of? Higher ed's been pummeled over the last 10, 15 years in Colorado. If anybody wants more money for transportation, it's me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but I definitely think it passes. Now, to me, the big ballot issue, or the one that I'm finding most interesting, is Prop 131, establishing an all-candidate primary and ranked choice voting in general elections in Colorado. Again, we had proponents on the podcast. That was interesting to talk to them about it. What do you guys think on this one? Pass or fail?
What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I want to hear what you
You
have to
go
say.
first, Kyle.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I'm going to go pass. And I'm not necessarily sure it's going to. I'm voting pass on this one because I want it to. I am definitely in favor of this. You can always repeal it. Alaska's trying to repeal theirs, whatever, if they don't think it's working or whatever. But for somebody like me who's unaffiliated and very much in the middle, to me, this has the opportunity to take some of the craziness out of politics. And so I'm voting yes. And so I think it's going to pass. Almost everybody I've talked to thinks it is voting for it. And again, maybe it's just because I hang out with people that think like me.
Yeah, I think it's going to pass too. I think it's really problematic. I asked some of my old political professors about this, Robert Levy and Tom Cronin.
Yeah.
I asked them for advice on it, and they said, Vince, there's so many questions. I'm not even going to tell you what I think, because it raises so many if then kind of scenarios, and that they really haven't figured out the answers to that. So I worry about the complexity of it and the fallout from it, that we don't really understand that. I think, I've heard some people say, why don't we test this out at a local level before we just go whole hog on this thing? That makes more sense to me, but I do think it's going to pass. One thing I regret is I think it'll sort of kill off our caucus system in Colorado. And, it's kind of on life support anyway, but boy, I love that interaction of actual human beings talking to each other about our democracy. And I think we're going to lose that with this vote. And we'll have less and less of that, where people are actually getting together to make decisions and sort of nominate candidates and say, yeah, you are our guy. You go run for office. You go run for the assembly and take it from here. So that's my regret, but I do think this thing will pass.
Wow. Holy mackerel. This is one where we could not be further different on. I actually think it fails.
Really?
I do, and here's why. And I'm supportive of it, and I'll tell you why I am supportive of it in a minute. I think it fails for this reason. I think the far right and the far left are both opposed to this, and opposed to it pretty robustly.
Yeah.
So all of the votes for this have got to come from the middle, and it's got to get to that 50% plus one vote. And I think that, based on what Vince said about having enough questions about it, I think that causes enough people that are in the middle that might kind of support the concept and the idea, that are going to vote no. And those no votes coupled up with the far right and the far left mean this thing is going to fail. And I think for that reason, I actually thought it was going to pass. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I would have said, yes, I think it passes. But just based on what I'm hearing now, and I haven't seen polling data on it, but based on what I'm hearing anecdotally, I actually think this thing is gonna fail. But I'll tell you why I'm supporting it. And pardon my language here, Vince, but Republicans have figured out how to fuck up every election in the state of Colorado in the last, like 15 years, save, one Cory Gardner election, right?
Yeah.
Maybe last 20 years. We can't do worse under a new system.
That's true.
And I think the Democrats understand this, and this is one of the reasons that they very much oppose it. They know how to win under the current system. We don't. And I like the idealized version of the caucus system and bringing people together. It has been so mismanaged at the Republican, from the Republican Party's perspective, that they refer to themselves as the grassroots, but they're not. They're the establishment. They stack precincts. They stack the caucuses to elicit the votes that they want, and actually can create unfair competitive advantages for their candidates. And I think that is just disastrous for the people of the state of Colorado, because then we end up getting the extremes from both parties, certainly the extremes from the Republican Party. If they come out of the caucus system, and I want less extreme, and I want more people like Kyle does. I want folks to be a little bit more in the middle, or to be reasonable. Not, it kills me. I couldn't get through a caucus to save my life now, and I get called a rhino all the time.
Wow.
I get called a rhino so much I'm starting to grow a horn. But I go to people and I say, okay, from a policy perspective, tell me how I'm less conservative than you are.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it doesn't happen. For me, Mark's perfect world, I'd get rid of the caucus system and just say, hey, you got to go get 100 signatures and do a $2,000 deposit. You can't raise $2,000. You probably shouldn't be in a political race. And the other reason I don't like the caucus system is this: libertarians can do nothing more than raise their hand at an assembly and impact the outcome of the election. Never do one lick of work other than raise their hand, go get 6, 7, 8, 10%. Susan Quellish Nelson did it 3 or 4 times here in El Paso County that caused Republicans to lose then House District 17. The Republican loses by 5%. The Libertarian takes 10% and does nothing more than raises their hand at the assembly. Democrats figured out how to get their people to run as libertarians to impact the outcome of elections that way. And I think this help gets rid of that issue. And I like that.
Got it.
But I can't disagree with anything you said either, right?
Yeah.
I think it's all fair.
And we do have, Kyle, aren't we about 50% unaffiliated?
Damn close. I think statewide it's 48.
Yeah, and they may see this as, giving them more power and authority, right? So
yeah, but I think it fails, but we'll see.
Yep.
And Theory's put $5 million. He and his supporters have put $5 million into this thing. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Okay, let's go on. There's one state race, Senate District 12, Mark Snyder against Stan Vanderwerf here in El Paso County. Interesting seat. Currently been held in the past by Republican Senator Bob Gardner. He was term limited. So now Mark Snyder, who's been in the Colorado House, running against Stan, Snyder's the Dem, Vanderwerf's the Republican. Stan's currently on the county commission. Probably one of the more competitive races, state Senate races in the state. What do you guys think about this one here locally?
Mark?
Which, by the way, is another reason to maybe adopt a new system of voting. We have either 17 or 18 state Senate seats up. We're talking about one that's competitive. And maybe there are 3 or 4 in the state that are competitive.
Yeah.
Not enough. And by the way, Vince, we're not going to talk about, changes in the state house or state Senate, because effectively nothing's going to change there. Democrats may pick up a seat or 2 in the Senate. And it may just be a hold serve in the House. Republicans, they're kind of tied in 5 races right now, but I'm not hopeful that Republicans are actually going to win those seats. So really nothing's going to happen, to change the dynamics in the state legislature. So it comes down to one race. I think Vanderwerf loses this race. I think he was going to lose this race, effectively from the time that he got into it. Snyder is a great candidate. He just is. Whether he's a moderate or not, he plays one really well. He does that. He listens, he engages, he articulates. I had several money people in Denver kind of came to me and said, hey, what should I do on this race? I don't want to see Republicans lose that seat, but I really like Mark Snyder. And when I said, I don't think Vanderwerf's going to win, they're like, oh, thank God. I can give money to Snyder. I know the Gazette's endorsed Vanderwerf, and I get that, and I understand that, and I understand the reasons why. I think he loses, though. I think Snyder is a far better candidate, and I think the Democrats are spending $1 million on this race. The Senate Democrats are spending $1 million on this race. Senate Republicans aren't spending much at all. But I know Americans for Prosperity are spending, maybe 500,000 on this race, but the Democrats are going to outspend Republicans in at 2-1. I think given the fact that Snyder's a better candidate, the Democrats are going to spend way more money. I think Snyder wins. I think he wins by 3 or 4.
That is fascinating. I moderated a debate between these two guys, and I agree with you. Snyder is an effective politician and was effective in the debate. And I don't know what role the ads that the Democrats have run against Vanderwerf. Have you guys seen these?
Oh my gosh. Some of the most misleading ads I've ever seen in my life.
That he was going to outlaw abortion in Colorado, and
took $1 million in salary and perks.
Yeah. Oh my God. So this
I got paid $100,000 a year for 8 years. Of course, or $130,000 a year for 8 years. That's $1 million.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Quick. But I still think Vanderwerf's going to win because he still fits the profile of El Paso County. And I'm not sure it's changed so much that Snyder can beat him. But, Mark, much more about this than I do. And I'm fascinated to hear you think Snyder will win. I'm just defaulting to sort of, he's a Republican in a Republican district. But those equations are changing. I hear you, man.
But this isn't El Paso County. It's Senate District 12. Republicans only have a +2 advantage in that district.
Good point.
That's only a +2. It's, it's not like he's, including a bunch of votes from Eastern El Paso County.
It's a good point.
That's why I think, and I will tell you, I've seen polling in this race, so maybe I'm cheating a little bit here. I've heard of 2 or 3 different polls. One had him tied, but this was before they really started carpet bombing Vanderwerf, right? And then I heard of another one, and I haven't seen these. I've just heard of them. Heard of another one that had Snyder up by 4.
Wow.
And I just think, given the money disparity, I think that's, and again, just the difference in the candidates. I think that's what
Yeah.
ends up doing it.
I'm going to guess Snyder on this one simply because I mean, Mark was elected mayor of Manitou Springs back in what, like '07 or '08 or something. I mean, and then he's in the House for every 2 years getting elected. There's a lot of people over there who've checked his name off on a ballot over the years. And I know he's got a ton of respect in the business community here. I'm on the Chamber of Government Affairs Committee, and there's a lot of respect for Mark on there. He works with people. He's pro business. So I just feel like over time he's just built up the reputation and support, and especially over there on the west side, that I'm going to guess Snyder on this one. Okay, let's move on to 4 of the U.S. House races in Colorado. The I may not have picked. I picked 2 of them that I think might not be all that competitive, but so I may have missed one here. I don't know, but let's start with Congressional District 3, Hurd versus Frisch. Lauren Boebert's old district, where Frisch almost beat her 2 years ago. So she ran to District 4, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Hurd versus Frisch in District 3. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Mark.
I'm going to go controversy here. I think Frisch wins because he was on the podcast and
Ah!
Hurd wasn't. No, I do think Frisch is going to end up winning there. If you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Hurd. But I think, you know, from what I'm hearing, that's going to be a super close race. I'm going to say Frisch.
Okay.
You know, I just saw Frisch raised like 3.5 million in the third quarter, which is more than a lot of Senate candidates around the country. And I saw a debate between these 2 guys, and I tell you, Frisch might have been the better debater. Hurd was pretty kind of reserved, and you can tell he's a little bit introverted. But I just saw Cook move this from likely to lean Republican. And I think that's what I've been hearing a lot, is Hurd's got the advantage. Just because it's not, if it was Boebert, I think Frisch wins, but
I agree.
because they completely upended that whole equation, I think Frisch has a fight on his hands. So I'm going to say Hurd.
All right.
I hope you're right, by the way. I hope that's right.
I think again, I thought Frisch was great on the podcast. I like him. If I was living over there, I'd probably be voting for him. But I just think Hurd has, from what I've seen that he's done, is in my view, he's running more toward the middle, which I think you have to do over there. But I feel like he's done it pretty effectively. So I'm guessing Hurd on this one.
By the way, I think that race may come down to Pueblo. Hurd's got to perform well there.
Yeah.
And he just kind of a Denver lawyer, and that's not Pueblo. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Plus the Republican mayor of Pueblo just endorsed Frisch, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
I saw that.
Yep.
Very interesting. Okay, let's go to CD4, Lauren Boebert's new district. I think she's been way ahead in the polling, but I had to put it on here just so we could talk about the craziness that is Lauren Boebert. So I'm picking Boebert.
Yeah, I picked Boebert this cycle, but maybe next cycle or the cycle after she loses a seat.
Yeah, I almost think Democrats are not really, they're keeping their powder dry on this and hoping she makes more news and that they can use that as fodder for taking her out next time. But I saw a debate with Boebert in it in the primary, and she was very restrained. You know, there wasn't any, spectacle. She wasn't groping anybody. It was fairly like the new Boebert. And I wonder if she's trying to be the new Boebert and win this thing. But it's amazing if she does win, and I think she will. And that's my vote. that it really justifies her carpetbagging move, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
makes it look pretty smart in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think ultimately it'll look like a pretty good strategy on her part. And I think she may have tempered the craziness, but my guess is on November 6th, we'll see it again.
He comes right back out.
I can't imagine it's gone for good.
Yeah.
So the next one, again, not sure this one is all that potentially close, but it is our local CD5 race to replace Doug Lamborn after 16 years. Jeff Crank against River Gasson. I'm going with Crank. I would be absolutely shocked if something happened. And I mean, I don't know. To me, a shock would be if he gets less than 60% of the vote.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. We put on a debate with these guys and Crank just won it hands down. River Gasson, she looked like she was kind of scared to be up there, and Crank looked very comfortable and sort of already like a very polished politician. So I think you're right, and he's a pretty smart guy. I think it's actually going to be probably a little bit of an upgrade for us in this district. So I think Crank's going to win it hands down.
I agree. First of all, Crank fits the district, right? I mean, that's one.
Yeah.
Two, he's been preparing for this job for 25 years. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I mean, I actually
Yeah.
mean that respectfully. Like, he knows what he's doing. He is going to show up day one. And quite frankly, Jeff Crank is going to be, the highest ranking Republican elected official in the state of Colorado on day one.
Good point.
And that's absolutely what we need. He knows what he's doing. Like I said, he's been preparing for this for years. Vince is right. He's going to be a massive upgrade.
Now, Bobert will have seniority on him, but he is taller than she is. So is that why he's the highest ranking?
Well, and he's, I just think he's gonna, speak with more reason, quite frankly.
Exactly. He's more rational. So absolutely.
And maybe he should strap a gun to his hip. I don't know. Maybe that'll,
I
up his level.
think he'll have a lot of respect in Congress. I do.
Yeah.
That'll
I-
help.
Yeah.
That'll
I
help
do
him move past Bobert fast, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he's going to end up on committees that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I think he's going to take over, and understands that the state of Colorado, from a Republican Party perspective, is kind of void of leadership, and he needs to fill that vacuum. And, Bobert's had a few years to make that happen and has done nothing with it. And so I think Crank is de facto going to be it, because Bobert just hasn't stepped into the role either.
Yeah. I think she's just been groping around trying to find her way.
Best comment of the day.
Okay.
Oh my God.
All right. Let's move on to CD8. How do you pronounce her name? Her last name?
Carveo.
Carveo.
Dara Carveo.
Carveo versus Evans. Probably the most competitive district in the state. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I think we may not know the answer to this on election night.
Okay, interesting. This will be good then, because I know very little about this. So I'm going to listen to you two and make my decision based off who sways me better.
The Cook report just put this as a toss-up. They won't even make a call on it. It's
Damn.
so cool. And it has the fourth most spending of any House district in the country. So, I think the balance of the House could hang on this
agree.
race, possibly. Carveo's the incumbent, and that district has the largest Latino population in the state, 40%. So I think that gives her a little bit of an edge. And so I think she's going to probably win for those reasons, but it's really close.
Yeah, boy, gun to head, I'll go with Vince on this. I think Carveo wins it, but I'll tell you this: I think, whatever happens in this race, Gabe Evans shouldn't hang his head. Nobody thought when he first got into
Yeah.
this thing that a Republican could win this. And all of a sudden it is super uber competitive. He has run a hard race. He has done a great job. And, I hope we find a place for a Gabe Evans after this is over. Because it's people like that work hard and are great candidates that need to be the future of the Republican Party.
Nice. Well, you guys went with the same one, so I'm going to go with Carvalho too. So not as controversial as we thought, but that also means when I'm not the odd person out, my odds of getting my back shaved on after the election are way lower. So
You haven't even agreed to this.
I know, but I'm just covering my bases in case that's the payment that'll be due.
Pragmatic vote right there, huh?
Okay, so
boy,
now
you
we're
should run
down-
for office.
Saving your
Kyle.
own skin, huh, Kyle?
Exactly. So we're down to three things. We're going to talk about which party we think is going to control the U.S. House of Representatives, which party we think is going to control the U.S. Senate, and then who wins president. Those are the last three things. Let's start with the House of Representatives. Currently, Republicans have the majority. Does that stay the same or change on election night?
What do you think, Mark?
Democrats win the majority, but by a whisker.
Okay. Vince, what are you thinking?
I think it depends on Colorado a lot. And, I asked Ernest Lunning, our lead political writer in Colorado politics, about this, and he agrees with Mark that if these races in Colorado go for the Democrats, that the Democrats could take over the House. Yeah, I agree with that.
Interesting. Yep. That's what I think the Dems are going to take control of the House, and I'm going the opposite route in the Senate. I think the Republicans are going to have the Senate for a couple of years. It might change in a couple of years, but I think just based on the races that are out there, considering, what is it, a third of them happen every 2 years, I think the Republicans are going to pick up the Senate.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. I mean, Joe Manchin's retiring, and so that seat, West Virginia seat's going to go to the Republicans. And then, I think it's all up to this Montana race, John Tester versus Tim Sheehy. John Tester is the Democrat incumbent. He's been in office for like 4 terms. But again, Cook was leaning toward Sheehy on this just because Montana has become such a red state, right? And I'm surprised Tester survived this long
Exactly.
with the complexion, the ideological complexion of that state. Now it's an interesting race because he's kind of painting Sheehy as the interloper, the newcomer, because he's only been there like 10 years and Tester's been there forever. But I just think Sheehy matches their politics a lot better than Tester. And so I think it hangs on that one race, and I think Sheehy will win, and it'll switch to Republican Senate.
So I agree with that. And those are the two races I was going to talk about. And that would flip it. If both of those flip, it's 51-49 Republicans. And then, of course, if there's a tiebreaker, it's whoever is the vice president. I do think there's a race that we need to be watching, though.
Okay. All right.
That could also have an impact here. And that's the North Carolina Senate race. I don't think the Republican has that thing sewn up.
Oh, I agree with that.
If that seat, I think these other two could flip, and that one could flip to Democrat, and we'd be right back to 50-50.
Wow. That'd be fascinating. Something to watch, right?
Yep. Now, I do think Republicans are going to take it, and I think it is going to be 51-49, but I just think we shouldn't forget about that North Carolina Senate seat.
So that brings us to the.
Well, wait, you didn't even see. Look at this, Vince. Look at this.
He didn't vote. What's his vote?
I voted before we even started.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you were just trying to, get away from the back thing here.
I'm going with the Republicans taking the Senate, and then
he's watching his back pretty closely.
That's
in 2 years.
Yes, he is.
In 2 years, the Republicans win it back.
He's watching his hairy back.
I am.
Closely.
I am. I'm going to go get it waxed in private this week, just so that there's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing there to All right, let's move on to the presidential race. Um,
You go first, Kyle.
okay, I'm going to go first. Mark and I, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this, and Mark and I have different views. I think we still do. I think Harris wins. Couple of reasons. I think she's going to ultimately win Pennsylvania, which is huge, and I think gets her over the top. The other thing, and again, who knows, it could change in the next week, but just in the last few days, some national polling has her pulling out to like a 4-point lead. And really, nationally, if she's up 3 or more, I think that moves her likelihood of winning way up. And from what I've seen, early voting in the 7 real determining swing states, women are outvoting men 55-45 in early voting in those 7 states. And I think that, based on her stronger support from women, I think for those reasons, I'm predicting she's going to win it.
What do you think, Mark?
I think Trump's going to win. And I think, first of all, I think early voting for Democrats doesn't mean a hill of beans, because Republicans tend to hold their ballots and vote later. So I just don't think that's a great.
I didn't say by party, though. I said by gender.
Oh, by gender.
Yeah.
I just, man, I don't know. Plus, I think that Trump is actually going to win 2 out of the 3 of those Great Lakes states. Yeah, whether it's like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania and Michigan, or Michigan, Wisconsin, whatever. I think he's going to end up winning those. I saw a recent poll that had him +1 in Pennsylvania, and it's is that Trump bias built into the polling data on these elections. I think that's the one thing that we don't know in this one, but I think he's up in all the Western states. He's up in Arizona, he's up in Nevada, up in Florida. Now it could come down to North Carolina again. I'm not sure he's doing super well there. Maybe these latest comments on Hispanics, and Puerto Rico being a floating garbage dump or whatever they called it. I mean, just freaking ridiculous for people to be saying such stupid stuff. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I just don't think that's going to have enough of an impact in those states where it matters as much. And I think ultimately Trump is going to win.
All right, Vince, break the tie.
Well, for a long time, I've wondered why it's close, because I feel like Harris has run a good campaign and Trump has just done whatever the hell he feels like doing and said whatever he feels like saying. And I think a lot of that doesn't matter to people. They feel this loss of control over the border, over prices, over, social order, and even international relations. And so they don't care about anything else except their pocketbook. And they sort of, have been polling for Trump. But I think Harris is going to win. And I think this Puerto Rican thing does not help Trump because there's 430,000 Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania. There's 110,000 in North Carolina. There's 100,000 in Georgia. That cannot help him when it's that close. Just a few thousand of those might make a difference. So
in those states,
I've been looking at this sort of cumulatively, and Harris has outraised Trump by millions of dollars. She's dominated the airwaves recently with ads. So many Republicans are coming out for Harris. And that didn't happen before. That didn't happen in 2020. That didn't happen in 2016. So I think that's another variable. Like you said, women are mobilized not just by abortion, and they were really mobilized in 2022 by abortion, but they're also mobilized by the prospect of the first possible woman president. So I think women are going to be a huge factor here. I think Trump's mouth, people may be finally getting tired of that. And you may see a reckoning for that. I've seen a little bit of evidence of that in these final days. And then, let's point out, Dems have won 7 out of the last 8 presidential elections with the popular vote. And so they kind of have this built-in advantage. So I think Harris has this great ground game going. I don't think Trump's as good because Trump has sent the message, hey, I'll turn people out just because it's me. You guys worry about doing your jobs, but also get ready for challenges and be ready for, how you're going to ensure the integrity of the vote. So his ground staff is sort of split with those mixed messages. And I think that could hurt him turning out the vote. But God, bottom line, who the heck knows? It's so damn close. Is this not the closest election we've seen in our lifetimes, guys? It's amazing.
I mean, 8 years ago, I would have, if we were having this conversation a week before, I'd have predicted Hillary.
Yeah.
So who the hell knows?
I just want to add one more observation to this, and I know we've gone way over and we need to be done here, but just one more observation. If it were any other Republican running against Harris, the Republicans would be winning hands down. And if it were any other Democrat other than Joe Biden running against Donald Trump, I think the Democrats would be winning hands down. I think if it were a Josh Shapiro, even a Gavin Newsom, I think the Democrats would be performing much better right now. I just think this whole San Francisco liberal thing is sticking. And I think this has kind of come down to the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't.
I would have loved to see Nikki Haley Harris.
Oh man.
And I think Nikki would have run that, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think you're absolutely right. So we all put together a spreadsheet so we have it next Tuesday and we can check off and see whose back's going to be groomed. And
I like how Kyle's like talking about this positively now. Like he's calculated in his mind. I've said enough dumb stuff that he's like, oh, it's not going to be me. I'm going to be on board with this.
Great. Well, you guys, thanks. This has been fun. Enjoyed it immensely. Absolutely looking forward to next Tuesday night again. Starting at 6 p.m., we're going to be doing a live episode from the newsroom at the Gazette here in Colorado Springs with Vince and some of his team, Mark and I, and we'll have guests on joining us throughout the evening. Again, Liberal Lois, who's been on with us before, Joe McCloskey, your partner, who's been on before. Some of the reporters from the Gazette, when they get their articles turned in on time, Vince will let them join us.
Yeah.
We got Rachel Beck coming back.
Yes.
Bob Gardner may weigh in on Senate 12 as well. It's going to be a great night, and you can get to us either through our YouTube channel, or I'm sure you can get to us through the Gazette's website.
Yep.
Find us, but it'll be complete coverage of Colorado and a little bit of coverage of the United States as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to be live on X and Facebook as well. So, yeah, I can't wait to see how it turns out. So we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys. I learned a lot, man. This has been great. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vince. Guys. Appreciate it.
Take care.
So this is Kyle Blakely with Mark Waller again, and this has been another episode of We Have Issues. We'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday on the live episode on November 5th for election night coverage. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, and real quick, Kyle, man, Vince is awesome. Love having him on. He is one smart guy.
Yeah, I always like his perspective on it because I think he not only produces the news, but he consumes a lot more news. So again, I feel like we had somebody on who's at least smarter than I am. I don't know about you, but
without a doubt,
to me. So,
and I apologize for stepping in on the extra there. But I just want to say that what a great guy.
Yeah, very good, very good. So we'll see everybody next week. Thanks for joining us.